Hi there. It's great to have all that lovely feedback following on from the Women's Climbing Symposium. Thanks so much to the volunteers for joining in the Mind Bus exercise. You really made it work, and I'm really grateful for your input. Getting so carried away with all the things that were happening on stage, I think there's a few things I forgot to say on Saturday. So just wanting to follow up really about this idea of compassion and making space for a sort of maybe a developing compassionate voice that we might have for ourselves, but also how we make space for voices that we don't enjoy so much, like the critical ones, like the judge, or maybe like the drill sergeant. So it kind of seems like an impossible task, doesn't it? They can be really loud, they can really interfere with our enjoyment of climbing. So one of the things I was aiming to demonstrate really on stage was it's not about kicking them off the bus. They have had an important role to play in your development. At some point, they will have kept you safe from maybe more criticism. They will have made sure that you got up and got things done when life was difficult. So we can't really just kick our prior experience off the bus, but it is about developing a new relationship with them. So one of the ways I like to do this is to name who's there. So I might say, "Hi, Judge," or "Hi, Drill Sergeant. Thanks for coming. Take a seat. I've got this." Okay, so what we're doing by that naming is we are creating a little bit of distance between us and those thoughts, those voices. We are acknowledging that they're there. We're kind of making room for them, but we're not getting too wrapped up in an argument or a back and forth conversation with them. Okay, so that's quite a nice technique. Now, these techniques, they're not necessary for when you're actually climbing. These are more for the before and afterwards. When you're actually climbing, you really need to be focusing on the climbing. So that would be a different set of techniques. But in terms of a long approach to these voices, I think it's really important that we do kind of acknowledge their presence. We say who's there, and we try and meet them with some kind of gratitude, perhaps. Thanks for coming here. And also an acknowledgement that they're not kind of needed right now. There are lots of other techniques, like we tried the happy birthday song on stage, which was kind of fun. Hopefully my singing wasn't too painful on the ears. So, there's things like that we can do also that helps create, again, that little bit of distance between us, a core us, and some of the internal voices that we have. So once we have that little bit of distance, what we're doing is we are developing what's called an observer perspective. So that is that part of us that is separate to and different to our thoughts, and can observe them for what they are, which is just thoughts, not necessarily reality. Okay. Whereas often we're actually very much wrapped and fused with some of those thoughts, like it's real and it's happening right now, and that's all of me. Yeah. So I'm talking to myself with all of me as a kind of critical voice. So we're aiming to just create that separation and that distance. The other thing I talked about, again, maybe not quite enough detail at the time, was having this, maybe an empty seat on the bus, that perhaps we do need to develop this kind of internal compassionate voice. And that's it's not necessarily about just being kind in a fluffy way to ourselves. That kindness really is about being realistic about what's happening. So maybe, again, naming some of those thoughts that are going on. I'm having judging thoughts right now. I'm having shouty thoughts right now. I'm having critical thoughts right now. So again, what we're doing is developing this sort of observer perspective, our part of ourself that can see and hear what's going on, but isn't kind of fused and locked with it. It is about that kind of, if you can develop that kind of radical acceptance of what's really going on for you, it becomes a lot easier then to put in place some kind of ways of managing it. So, if there is a very scared part of me showing up, trying to push that away and not listen to it and not feel it doesn't tend to work. But if I acknowledge I'm having lots of frightened thoughts right now, I'm feeling scared, then that allows me then to do something to help me regulate my nervous system. So, okay, I'm feeling scared. What can I do then that will help with that? Okay, so that kind of developing some kind of compassion isn't about cheerleading for yourself. It's not about, way, go, you got this. Okay, that's not necessarily going to drown out some of the negative or critical or difficult voices we might have. What we're more wanting to do is to get a substitute voice going, if I can sort of say it like that, and one that is realistic about what's actually happened externally and what's happening internally, and can meet that kindly without putting extra layers. I talked about doubling down, so not doubling down on the criticism because I'm scared and that's terrible. It's more about I'm scared and there we are. So if we can meet that with some kind of acceptance, that can be a compassionate way of dealing with some of the feelings that are inside. Okay, so just talking through a few things there. There's loads of great resources out there. If you look up Compassionate Mind, Chris Iron's work on the internet. Also, if you look at Russ Harris's work, again, on acceptance and commitment therapy, lots of techniques that can help you with developing that compassionate voice that might be quite small inside you. And if you remember the diagram I showed, what we're looking for also is to develop our own self-soothing system. So that part of us that can recognize how we're feeling, can be honest about that, can meet it kindly, and can also maybe develop some techniques to help with managing, regulating our own nervous system. That way we're growing that part of our emotional regulation system, and it's allowing us to feel safe then to start maybe trying things that are harder. But if we don't have that in place to start with, we don't feel safe enough to start to expand our comfort zone. So comfort zones can only really be expanded from a place of feeling safe or safe enough in the first place. So that's what we're aiming to do for ourselves. Hope that's been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you at the next workshop.